Hi everyone, how are you? Buy-to-let pays. How many of you have ever had a problem tenant? Put your hand up. Oh, blimey, a lot of you. Normally it's only one or two people. Okay. You're here because you don't want another one. Pardon?
Ask how many rogue
We don't have any
landlords
rogue landlords. I'll come on to rogue landlords later on. I've got a lot to cover in half an hour. Okay, I could talk for 5 hours, but I only have half an hour. Okay, so thank you for inviting me, Ranjam. Pleasure to be here. I help landlords when they're in distress and letting agents. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been helping landlords and letting agents for over 25 years. I know I don't look old enough. I used to be 6'2". I've had a hard life, okay? That's after 35, 40,000 evictions. It's a tough time. But my background was legal. I ended up working for a couple of law firms. I worked in the recession in '89 when the good old interest rate was 15, 16%. We have some older people in the audience, you remember those days. I used to go to court and obtain the possession orders, so I wasn't popular. Then I became a private investigator and a bailiff. And I was collecting debt and I was helping people. I was going to brothels, believe it or not. I was going to cannabis factories. I was following husband and wives that were playing away. You name it, I'd done it. I was a bailiff, so I had to go collect council tax, VAT debt. I'd go to travellers' sites. So I did really loads of mad stuff, and I've been threatened. I've had a baseball bat on me, I had a gun pulled on me. Mad stuff. Thankfully now I don't have to do any of that, so I just sit behind a desk. So what happened was in 99, 2000, I met my old partner, Jonathan, who was a multiple landlord and letting agent. We used to play football together, and we had an office in the same office block in Mill Hill. And he goes, Paul, I believe you help with problem tenants. I've got problems. I've got 22 illegal immigrants living in a 3-bed house in Edgware. Can you help me? I said, yeah, of course I can. And this is what I do. So I serve a notice, I get a call, and I get the bailiffs in. I worked with a firm of solicitors at the time. And out of that meeting, we set up Landlord Action in 99, 2000. Since I've done that, then I do a whole lot of other stuff. So I'm on the advisory council for the property redress scheme, and I do a lot of consultation with the government. I've been involved in the latest HMO consultation, the consultation relating to banning orders of rogue landlords, all that. I was involved with the Deregulation Act. I helped draft the new Section 21 notice. A couple of the ideas came into law with my ideas. So I do a lot of consultation with the government. And I'm always championing landlords. That's what I'm all about. Because, of course, actually 98% of landlords out there, and 98% of tenancies, go through absolutely swimmingly. And that's relating to tenancies that are being paid. The 2% that go wrong is when a tenant doesn't pay and when there's deposit disputes. So it is a small minority. But if it goes wrong, it can affect your pocket and also your health. Landlords get a disease called landlord rage. Anyone had landlord rage? They're all laughing. Yeah, you have. Okay. We are like landlord Samaritans at Landlord Action. We're like plumbers. You don't really want to call us. You don't want to pay 900 quid for a boiler, but you know we're there. And that's basically what we do. And 6 years ago, I became a firm of solicitors. So at my office at Landlord Action, we have, I've got 15, 16 staff. I've got 9 lawyers. I've got 4 lawyers, 5 paralegals. We run about 500 cases at any one time. Section 8, Section 21 cases, and then really complex cases. And then what happened was my role changed. Last July, I sold Landlord Action. I'm not that wealthy, by the way. You think I am, but I'm not, right? I sold Landlord Action to Hamilton Fraser, who own My Deposits, the property redress scheme, Total Landlord Insurance, and some really well-known brands, and a Client Money Protect. So I'm now brand ambassador and a director of the whole company, and now we're part of something bigger. So I've left on your seats just some stuff about Landlord Action, and also Total Landlord Insurance as well. We insure about 40,000 properties, and we own My Deposits, the deposit scheme, with the National Landlords Association as well. So that's just a bit of an overview about what I'm all about. We're regulated, as I said, and it's fixed fee stuff. So some of you will never, ever have a problem with a tenant. You might have to serve a notice, and the tenant may not leave, or they might leave, but you won't need to go to court. No one wants to evict a tenant. It's the last resort. Let's be very clear about that. So I do a lot of press and I do a lot of PR, as Ranjam mentioned. When was I? Well, I can't remember now. 2 months ago, I was on Panorama. Did anyone see Panorama? I was on Panorama, non-fault eviction. So it was very tenant-based, okay? There's a massive shift with the government towards tenants, offering tenants better properties, rogue landlords. Do you know what the average rent in London is now? Anyone shout out a number? Anyone? Close, 1680, very good guess, right? 1680, tenants are paying more money than ever, okay? The government are saying, you know what, tenants need a better deal, you know? I can tell you now, there's more than that I know on the last count, and that was about 3 weeks ago, there's 16 live consultations to do with the private rental sector, yeah? Ever changing, more change than ever. Now you guys have to be more professional than ever. Okay, landlords might have to be part of a redress scheme. Did you know that? That might come into effect. Okay, meaning that the tenant, that your tenant now is the consumer. Ranjan touched on it before. They are the consumer. The government prefer professional landlords. They prefer institutional investors, like for build to rent. You all know what build to rent is, don't you? Institutional investors, building blocks, keeping the blocks and renting them out themselves. They're professional. The tenant should have a better deal. They should have 24-hour concierge. They should have a gym on site. They should have better Wi-Fi, you know. And actually, 90% of landlords out there, just over 90% of landlords, only have one property. And the problem the government see is that landlords just aren't up to speed with what's going on with the rules and regulations. There's actually over 150 rules and regulations to renting out your property. Do you know that? Do you know them? No, I don't really. I don't even know them. Right, but that's with regard to health and safety. It's hard to keep up with stuff. And if you don't have time to manage your property, you must instruct a letting agent that does that for you. And I'll go into a bit more detail. So I do the press, but just actually, it's good timing you got me on Manjam because my programme's on tomorrow night. Anyone see the new series, Bad Tenants, Rogue Landlords? Anyone? So it's on tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. I've lose track. I'm doing an eviction of a High Court eviction in Lewisham where the landlord, who was an accidental landlord, she ended up sleeping in McDonald's for 2 weeks. She was homeless. Really tragic story. Last week I got spat at and attacked, which was very nice. That was a property in Hampstead. Next week I got 2 stories on where it was a rent-protected tenant that lived in a property for 35 years. She was a hoarder. She had mental health. It was very tragic, really tragic. But I had to wear a protective mask and wear the whole outfit. And it was horrendous. I've never had smells like it. It was officially the worst property I've been in over 25 years. She didn't use her toilet or bathroom for 2 years. Is any of you going to dinner later? No, I'll spare you the detail. You watch out for that. So now you want to watch, don't you? You want to see me heaving. But anyway, so that's it. So I do a lot of press and PR. I get loads of calls. Actually, I get busier now with Jeremy Corbyn. All these ridiculous laws he's trying to put on landlords. The last one, I've got a place in Spain near Marbella. I got a call from BBC. I go on News 24 quite often. I get a call. Will you go on News 24? We need you in the studio. And I don't have Skype or Wi-Fi in my flat, long story. But anyway, I was out there to rent it out. And there was a lady in a block. And I said, can I use the Skype? Because I need to do this live link up. And it's because he's saying any tenant that takes a pet, the landlords have to take him as a matter of mandatory ground. Right? This is what Jeremy Corbyn's saying, you know. And then, of course, I went on Panorama, and Panorama, we were talking about non-fault eviction, and the shift was landlords were evicting tenants for non-fault. But they normally evict a tenant because they're in rent arrears under Section 21, or they want to be rehoused by the council, or a landlord's circumstances change, they need to move back in the property, or because of now Section 24, they need to sell. And we are seeing some landlords sell. So let me move on. I only have half an hour. Is that right? I only have half an hour. Can I squeeze another 5 minutes or not? Okay, we'll see how it goes. And then maybe you might want to evict me after. Right, okay. So, client money protection. That is the latest law that's coming in. Good news for you landlords. Who uses letting agents? Put your hand up. Come on, don't be shy. Okay. Who asks your letting agent, do you have client money protection? Put your hand up. Good. You're very clued up because you guessed 1700, didn't you? You can come and do future talks with me. It's very good, isn't it? Right, okay. Client money protection is like ABTA. When you book a holiday, if your holiday company goes skint, you get your money back. You have to have a letting agent that has client money protections. And we pushed that through the House of Lords with the chairman of the Property Redress Scheme. So that means that if a company goes skint and they have client money protection, which is going to be coming in very shortly, it means the landlord's rents are covered and the tenant's deposits are covered, which is really good news. They must have client money protection. That was me at the house at Downing Street when the squatters' law came in. I was quite involved in that in 2012. If you, let's say, for argument's sake, Ranjan's building one of his many developments all over London. Is that true, Ranjan? Okay, he's a very busy man. We're very lucky he's here tonight, actually, right? Doing his development, and squatters break into his residential property. That's now a criminal act, okay? And they could be fined up to £5,000 and put in prison for 6 months. So that came into effect. And on the day that came in, I did 9 radio interviews and 4 TV interviews. The press were all over. That came in 2012. So we do a lot of campaigning. So what we do is we serve a notice, we issue court proceedings, we get the bailiffs, and we do it all for fixed fees, okay? That's our main thing that we do. So getting the perfect tenant, getting a good tenant, not getting a bad tenant. Circumstances change. If you use a letting agent, you'll use them for let only, and part of that process will be the referencing, okay? But as landlords, you want to make sure that you have the decent tenant in there. It's about sustainability, okay? Risk management. A happy tenant is a happy, anyone? Landlord, exactly. No news is good news, correct? As long as our rent's being paid, tenant's not complaining, we're happy, yeah? What 5 things just keeps a landlord awake at night? Shout them out. Void periods. Rent arrears. Anything else? Maintenance, correct. 2 more. I mentioned it before. Come on, guys. Taxes and legislation. They're keeping landlords awake at night. So you need to make sure that you've got a good tenant in there, and you want them ideally to stay in your property as long as possible. The tenant is driven by the property, not by the landlord, but you're a professional landlord. So what I do is there's a law that's coming in on the 25th of May called GDPR. We heard of that. Some of you would have heard of that. It affects every business-to-business stuff. Anyone that takes data, okay? As landlords, if you're taking data, you need to know about GDPR, okay? I don't know how they're going to enforce it, but how you take the data, how do you keep the data, why are you keeping the data? Well, you're doing that, you're keeping the data because you need to make sure that the tenant's referenced and they're going to be moving your property and they can afford to pay the rent. How do you keep it? And if you have to delete it or dispose of it, how do you do that? So it's very important to get up to speed. And one thing that I can recommend, and it's a complete no-brainer, landlords, is that join a landlord association. Any of you members of the NLA here? They are good stuff. That's really good. That's really encouraging. For 80 quid a year, get up to speed with what's going on. You know, so joining, you know, the NLA or the RLA is a no-brainer. So bank statements is 3 months bank statements will tell you what day they get paid, how much they get paid. Okay, have they paid the last 3 months' rent? Have they got utility bills? Okay, have they got a gambling habit at William Hill? You want to know about it sooner rather than later, don't you? Yes or no? Yeah? Okay. Getting a bank reference won't be worth the paper it's written on. If a tenant turns around and says to me, Paul, I'm not giving you my bank statements, what would I say to that tenant? Anything? See you later. You know, these are my terms of business. I need to make sure that you can pay the 6-month or 12-month AST at the rent of £1,500 a month. I need to see what your income is. I need to see that you can afford to live and that you're paying your BMW car finance or your utility bills or your whatever bills. And how much have you got to live off for the rest of the month? It's important. You've got to work out affordability. It's really important. Utility bills, the previous tenancy agreement will have the previous landlord on or the current landlord that's going to be moving on to you. Check him out. Go on the land registry. Yes, your letting agents might be doing it for you. If you're doing it all yourself or you're busy to do this referencing, and this is where a lot of landlords trip up, then you can naturally use a referencing company that can do it for you, which makes it. And of course, you can get rent guarantee, rental insurance, which covers you if the tenant defaults, which pays you every month, and legal fees. We do work for a big rental insurance company as well. Getting you now passports and work visas. Now right to rent. You know about right to rent? Yes, great stuff. Okay, 1st of February that came in. I totally disagree with it because I thought it was going to cause discrimination, right? And actually, I was at a talk. I was told, do you know how many people have been deported relating to right to rent in this new law that came in? Anyone have a guess? Sorry? 27. Right? 27 people have been deported. Ridiculous, isn't it? Okay? So, but you have a duty of care. You have to have a paper trail. So you need to check the visa status of the individual. Okay? And you need to see that they've got the right to stay in this country. Okay? And how that would change when we come out of the EU, I don't know. Okay? So, you know, student visa, work visa. And actually, if it runs out, their visa status runs out during the term of the tenancy, you need to call the Home Office checking line to see that they've got the right to stay in the property. So it's important that you copy and keep all the details. And in course, employment reference, you know. In the bank statements, it will show the direct debit or the standing order of their wages coming in. You need to get an employment reference from the HR department of that employer for your tenant, okay? Check out the company. Make sure it exists and it's not fictitious. One of the biggest rent arrears cases we had at Landlord Action was 58 grand. The rent was 9 grand a month. And it was in a cheap road called Bishop's, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? Bishop's Avenue, all right? In Hampstead Garden Suburb. And that was a cheap end, believe it or not. And the guy got in for a letting agent with a false ID. Okay, we never got the money back. He actually ended up suing the letting agent. The situation is you need to make sure that employer exists. And call the employer. Go and Google. What's their company registration number? What's their company accounts? You know, do that. A lot of letting agents, especially on let only, they just want their commission. Agreed? Yeah? This is your asset. Buy to let pays. Long term. You know, the average yield's what, Ranjan? 4.5%, 5%? Fair enough to say? Yeah? Okay? But it works. Rents are going up. Demand is strong, especially in London. You know? Shared economy now. More landlords are moving to HMOs. Harder to manage, but much higher yields. Yeah? But when that goes wrong, that can cost you. You know, we do evictions. I have a lot of HMO landlords that I act for. And then there's one bad apple causing the other one's grief, you know, and then they all decide leaving, and then that costs you a lot of money. Or someone's nicked another person's Cocoa Pops, you know, or there's whatever it may be. We have that. So stuff happens. So you need to make sure you do your diligence. And then, of course, you can get a guarantor. If you've got a student, or you've got any of you rent to housing benefit tenants here? Anyone? Okay, so housing benefit tenants, ideally, you want to get a guarantor that's a homeowner, you know, but there's challenges in the housing benefit market, and universal credit, where you've got 6 benefits paid in one, and you're waiting that individual to pay the money over. The rental payment is the biggest money over. Some landlords are having problems, especially when tenants take direct payment, end up exiting the market. So you have to have a good relationship with your council. So getting a guarantor, they need to be referenced as well. It's really, really important. Okay, gathering info. At the point of when the tenant wants your keys, that is the point when they are more friendly to you than ever. If you're doing the viewings, you may not get involved in that, and you want to be a landlord at arm's length, you know, quite rightly a lot of the time, because you have to also put a price on your time. How many of you work full time? Put your hands up, okay? Quite a few of you. Okay, put a price on your time. Do you want to take a call from your tenant who's pissed at 3 in the morning because he's lost his keys? Yes or no? No? Do you want to take a call that the boiler's broken down at 2 in the morning? You know, you might have a maintenance guy, but you need to bear that in mind. Some people don't realise that. You know, I'm not paying the agent 7.5%, it's too much money. But actually, you know, if you pick a good letting agent, you do your diligence, it's actually it makes sense sometimes to be arm's length away. But actually doing your referencing and gathering the information is really important. You know, getting a next of kin. We have tenants that end up in prison or abscond, you know, and the stuff's been left at the property. We've got no one to contact, or they move abroad. You know, getting a car registration number, or maybe if they've relocated to London from Manchester, they might be renting a property up in Manchester, and that's an asset. They end up absconding or have a deposit dispute and I need to chase them for money. Well, I get a charge on the property in Manchester. Getting information, having clear notes on your file, because 6 months down the line, you'll forget what's going on. It happens. We're busy, you know. We're looking at other stuff. And professional bad tenants, they're the worst type of tenants to get. They will tenant. Have we got any naive, vulnerable landlords in the audience, please? No? Yes or no? You're supposed to say no. All right? No, that's good. No. What they will do is they will call up and they will go online and they will speak to amateur landlords and they will ask them loads of questions rather than the other way round. And they will find out how quickly they need to rent the property in. And they will entice them with bigger rent payments, right, to move in. But they won't give you all the referencing that you want. They give you a building society book that shows money in, but it's not a true reflection of the spending habits. The worst serial bad tenant that we ever had at Landlord Action, and we've dealt with about 20 to 25 in 18 years of trading that we've evicted on more than one occasion, sometimes 3 occasions. And yes, why isn't there a bad tenant database, I hear you say? Yeah? There's a rogue landlord database, isn't there? Okay. But Actually, believe it or not, you can't get access to it. And when I was on the consultation, I said, you're talking about rogue landlords and rogue agents. I had the redress schemes there, had Arla, had NOWs. I said, share the pool of information of the expelled members, put it on a list and make sure that the whole public, the landlords and the tenants, have access before they give their keys or before they give their deposits. And they said, no, it's only to be used for local authorities. What good's that? You know, and I said that to them, you know. So I know that Sadiq Khan has been talking about some boroughs to share some access, and there is some data of serial offenders. You know, and my idea was, and Manjan touched on it before, was 3 strikes and you're out. 3 strikes and you're out as a landlord, you know. Because sometimes landlords are just naive. And if you watch the programme tomorrow night, on our series, they follow Harrow Council. And some of the conditions are absolutely disgusting, which landlords, I mean, you know, you won't get rogue landlords like that in rooms like this. They don't want to be educated. They don't want to spend 20 quid to get in. You know, they don't. They won't use letting agents. We still get landlords that calling us up at Landlord Action on our advice line that failed to put the deposit in the deposit scheme. It only came out 11 years ago, that rule, right? And you can get sued 3 times plus the deposit. You know, where I've got now, my organisation from 15 people, we now have over 200 staff. So I have at my legal division, and I work with all the other brands, my legal division, I have the Landlord Action lawyers doing 500 evictions. I have the adjudicators for the property redress scheme, the other side of them, that are doing adjudicators on letting agents, complaints from landlords and tenants. And then the other side, I've got the adjudicators for my deposits that are looking at all the deposit disputes and inventories. And they did, last year, they did 6,500 disputes for landlords looking at deposits disputes. And the managing agents are worth their weight in gold. They can make or break your portfolio if you get a good managing agent. Get someone that's been recommended to you. Go on a really good website called allagents.co.uk, allagents.co.uk, and they do reviews. Landlords and tenants put reviews of the agents on there. Agents rely on reputations. Yes, you might want to use an agent that belongs to an association where client money protection is built within their membership. So we're talking about Arla, which are now called Property Mark, or NOWs, or RICS. They have to have client money protection. But if they're an independent agent, you ask them, do you have client money protection? Okay? And we actually sell it as a standalone product from our insurance company called Client Money Protect for independent agents. Meaning you're protected, it's really important. And do they belong to a redress scheme? Now, there's only going to be 2 redress schemes, the Property Ombudsman and us, the Property Redress Scheme. We've got over 7,000 letting agents that belong members of a scheme. And I always expose a dodgy letting agent on every series. I make, along with Airbnb, and this one, actually last week, I had a brothel I went to as well. I wasn't visiting, it was business, right, believe me, right, okay. Anyway, so long story short, so I try and expose these types of scams. And subletting, there's never been so much subletting in London, ever, in the last 2 to 3 years. The worst place is down the road, along the Edgware Road. There's loads of scams that are going on, where they're doing company lets and saying employees are moving in, and they're subletting, they've got concierge on backhanders. You know, I see it all, you know. Airbnb changed a lot of that. So it's important that if you're letting agent, I mean, on this series, and they actually, this company that I exposed, they're a dodgy company in Barking, they were linked to a previous company I exposed in the last series. I got locked in the office, and they were nicking rents. They were doing rent to rent, and they had a scam with Eastern European chaps, and they were basically putting loads of people in, nicking the rents. So we see all these scams, but subletting is a big problem because the shared economy in the whole of this, in London and the whole country, has absolutely massively grown because individuals can't rent studios. They can't even rent 1-bedders. The rents are too high. So now they need to rent rooms, you know, and now people are profiting from it, you know, and they're not doing it correctly. So we deal with loads of complaints. You need to, when you are doing your diligence on the letting agent, the full management, what's their full management agreement? What's their terms of business? When do they do midterm inspections? When do you get the rent? How quickly do they pass the rent on? I'm going to go to your office. What's your software system? How do you report repairs? Are you putting markup on your repairs? Yeah? What qualification do you have? Because anyone can be a letting agent. Now, what is happening, and I think it's good, letting agents will have to be regulated. And in Wales, there's a thing called Rent Smart Wales, where there's a certain criteria of education they need, and they have to make sure they've got professional indemnity insurance, they've got client money protection, and regulation is a good thing because it means we're increasing standards. But also landlords have to be more professional as well. You know, you have to treat it as a business. It's so important because the shift has gone towards tenants, and of course, you're fighting with other landlords to get these tenants in. You know, you want a tenant to stay in your property as long as possible. The average term of a tenancy is roughly about 20 months. You know, who wants a tenant in their property for 20 months and longer? Yes or no? Put your hands up. You want that, don't you? You don't want void periods, you don't want relet fees. It makes sense. It's about longevity. It really is. You know, and deposit protection. So at My Deposits, we act for over 150,000 landlords, 5,000 letting agents. We act for some of the biggest letting agents in the country. Any of you use My Deposits? Put your hand up. Okay, there's quite a few of you. So there's two ways. There's the deposit you keep, and there's an insurance-backed scheme where you hold the deposit, you pay a premium. Or there's the custodial, where it goes in a B account and you just pay the interest and there's no admin fee. Okay, but most landlords want to hold the deposit. Okay, and if you don't protect it within 30 days or serve the prescribed information, you can't serve a Section 21 notice. Okay, and you could be fined 3 times plus a deposit. Pardon me, to pay the tenant. Okay, there's no defence against it. And there's a lot of ambulance chasing companies out there that actually will send letters and they will try and get 50% of the award that they settle. And inventories. You know, getting an inventory company to do the inventories for it, it's your evidence. You know, what was it at the beginning of tenancy? What was it mid-term? What was it on the checkout? Clear pictures. Make sure it's precise. What were the meter readings? You know, I walk past the staff every day. They sit in front of me and they're looking at pictures. I go, well, that's a strange picture. I saw one picture. I thought, what's that? And they were telling me this funny story. A tenant put a raw fish underneath the floorboards to cheese off the landlord. Right? They said, look at this. And they couldn't make an award on it because we couldn't prove how it got there. It was just because obviously the smell, they wanted to really cheese off their landlord. And that's what happened. So inventories are really important. You must make sure you've got inventories. Generally, they cost you 50, 60 quid. They don't cost a lot. And then landlord, you know, you need to make sure that you align yourself and become friends and be professional with the neighbours of your property. You know, you could have properties anywhere in the country. I'm a buy-to-let landlord. I care about the property. I'm a long-term landlord. I want to make sure that we have a decent tenancy. And if you have a problem, please call me, okay? Because actually, I want to know if I have a cannabis factory or 25 people living in my 2-bed flat or a brothel or 25 dogs or a hoard or whatever. I want to know about it sooner rather than later. It's really important. You know, your neighbours, your eyes, your ears, or they've absconded. I want to know sooner rather than 4 months down the line when, oh, well, they haven't paid the rent for 4 months and I turn up 4 months later, oh, they left 4 months ago, you know. And that's why you've also got to have landlord insurance. So I've given you some forms there. If any of you want landlord insurance, contact that number. If you quote Shamps10, which is my nickname, Shamps10, you'll get 10% off some insurance, if anything. So we insure about 40,000 properties. We actually, just a plug for TLI, we do malicious damage insurance for up to 25 grand. As well, so the cover's quite extensive. And like I said, we're partners with the NLA for NLA insurance. And compliance. There's so much more compliance now, as I said. You know, now, prior to tenancy, you have to serve an EPC, gas safety certificate, a how to rent right guide. And you've got to use the updated version. That got updated in January 18. Did you know that? Good. Okay, you serve the wrong one, the tenant puts a defence in. Tenants are clued up, right? Especially when they go to court and they get free advice from duty solicitors. Working smoke alarms, carbon monoxide, yeah, very important. That needs to be done prior to tenancy, ideally, within 30 days. If you haven't done it all, you give the tenant the keys and there's one thing missing and you need to do an EPC, gas safety, the tenants don't give you access. That's a big problem. So that you can't serve the Section 21 notice. Yeah, and then, of course, there was a thing called retaliation eviction, which is what I gave evidence at Parliament for. Shelter actually drafted a bill. They've worked out, and I actually agreed with them, that 2% of landlords were serving Section 21 notices because tenants were complaining about disrepair. Because they said, oh, you know what, I'm not going to carry the work out, I'm going to evict them. And that's why it came in. So now there is the procedure where if the tenant complains, they put something in writing, the landlord has 14 days to comply with it and deal and remedy with the issues. Again, this was brought in for the rogues. If it has, you have issues, you need to deal with them. You need to document them. Tenant doesn't give you access. You need to make sure that's clear. To prove that to the environmental health officer or to the court. How can I get in there? I can't let myself in. They're not giving me access. You need to get consent. It's important. And if you don't do anything, and it's that bad, and it's that bad, the property, then you could be served with an improvement notice or a hazard notice, and you can't serve a Section 21 within 6 months. Now, after the Deregulation Act came out on the 1st of October 2015, a Section 21 has to be served after 4 months, not at the beginning of the tenancy. And it has a 6-month lifespan. And they were my ideas, and it was great that it came in, because we were evicting tenants on notices that were 4 years old. And actually, you have a lot of decent tenants that have unfortunately been evicted because landlord circumstances are changing, And just quickly, if there's 2 months rent arrears, when you serve a notice, it's a 14-day notice called a Section 8 notice. So we have that draft, and we have a fixed fee of £120, including VAT, to draft and serve that notice for you. That's a mandatory ground. As of the day you serve notice, as of the day you go to court, you'll get a ground 8 possession order. Okay? If it's less than 2 months, it's a discretionary ground. It's up to the judge whether they want to if they want to grant a possession order, discretionary. And then if it's non-rent arrears, it's other breaches. Antisocial behaviour, damage to the property. But you've got to be able to prove it. Airbnb, subletting. You have to prove it. And generally, you're having to go down that route because there's no break clause in your tenancy agreement. Make sure you put break clauses in your tenancy agreement just to cover yourself. It's a no-brainer. And then, of course, Section 21. Section 21 is non-fault, as they keep saying. But you go to court, you don't need a hearing date. On average, a judge looks at a Section 21 case for 90 seconds. Did you know that? Last year there was 29,000 accelerated possession cases in 2017, which was 5,000 lower than the year before. And that most probably is because the Deregulation Act is kicking in and landlords can't serve the Section 21 notices because of the compliance stuff, So make sure, and you can't claim for rent arrears under Section 21, but it's easier. Most landlords instruct us to do Section 21, but there is rent arrears. They just want the property back. They know they can't get their money back, because it's easier and clean. And if you do have to go to court, you have to go before a judge. You have to get a possession order, and that takes 6 to 8 weeks. And we issue possession claims online. It's called PICO, so we get quicker hearing dates from the court. We do about 45 hearings a month, up and down the country, advocates that are representing landlords and obtaining a possession order, getting a money order, getting a cost order, and seeing if we can transfer it up to the High Court. That's a successful case. Unsuccessful case is if tenants turned up and they defend the case, and there's disrepair issues, or they're being harassed, or they're waiting for housing benefit to be paid, okay, or they've paid the landlord the money and it's disputed. Then that case may get adjourned to a second hearing date, okay, and then you'd be in for further costs. But if you do get the possession order, then the tenant has to leave. But if they don't leave, then you're in for the third and final step, which is bailiff eviction. You have to wait for the eviction. I went one bailiff on a shoot. He didn't mind being filmed. He had 12 evictions that day in 20-minute slots. And that's why we try and get High Court bailiffs to do an eviction. You'll see the one tomorrow night that I do. We can turn those around within 2 weeks, which is a result. But you have to get leave from the judge. Depending on the judge you're at, we have to explain that eviction's taking too long because the bailiff at that court, or it's causing landlords financial hardship. And it costs more money, but it's worth doing, So just coming to the end now, most disputes relate to cleaning, okay? Only 1% of deposit protections that we get at My Deposits end up in a dispute. And the difference with My Deposits is the tenant raises a dispute and they've got to do it within 3 months, otherwise they lose the case, Do you know how many calls that we took for My Deposits last year on our customer advice line? Over 130,000 calls, right, from landlords, tenants and letting agents on deposit disputes, yeah? So if you are owed rent, then you have to think to yourself, is it worth collecting? Generally, you might need to try and trace the tenant. If you can trace the tenant, then great, but you normally would wait 3 months to be able to trace them. And I've got time for one more story. Is that all right? Is that right? One more story? Thank you. She's hard taskmaster, she is. Right, okay, I'll talk very quickly anyway. This is actually an Aston Martin we seized. Okay, it's Ranjans. No, it's not really. Right. I couldn't resist it, right. So what happened was I was doing another program called Nightmare Tenants quite a few years ago. The tenancy was £6,500 a month. It was in Putney Wolf. And the tenant took the tenancy out for his mistress, put her there. I got the instruction that £40,000 rent arrears, another lawyer firm messed it up. Landlord came to me, she goes, I want you to evict tenant, I want you to collect my money. So I said, I'm not Superman, I'll get the tenant out. It's very, very hard to collect the money. 80%, 90% of the time, we never collect the money. The tenants don't have anything. Anyway, so we got the possession, we got the money order, we did the filming, got the property back. She goes, right, let's get to collect the money. So we traced the guy back to his family matrimonial home in Watford. He was living with his wife and kids. Did a search. The property was mortgaged up to the hilt, so we couldn't get a charging order. But I sent a process server to go and serve some bankruptcy papers. Lo and behold, he had Aston Martin and 2 Mercedes on the forecourt. Oh, happy days, right? So we transferred it up to the High Court. I got my top bailiff guy, Mark, who's about 7 foot. He's a massive unit, right? Went there, knocking at the door. I get a call at 6 in the morning, wake him up. I said, Paul, listen to this, it's all kicking off. The wife had, 1, just found out about the affair, and 2, just found out about it was 82 grand, 92 grand debt. And we collected the money. We seized the car, and we collected it in 3 instalments. On that final note, let me just say one thing to you. A lot of your tenants may not have Aston Martins. I'm just telling you that now, okay? Just so you know. So just on one plug, you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Shamplina and at Landlord Action. And the one last plug, I also put on a boxing event for the property industry. It's called Rumble with the Agents, okay? It's on the 24th of May at the Avenue in Henley's Corner. If anyone's interested, if you go on the website, Rumble with the Agents, if you want to see letting agents to developers punch each other hard in the face, by all means, come down. It's good fun. Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions for Paul?
Oh, we got one. Should we take one at the back? Just hold on.
Right at the back.
Right. Just so that we can help, I'm going to give you the mic and then say your question to Paul.
Paul, I'm a massive fan of you. First time I met you on TV, I fell in love with you. I wish
Where's my security? No, I'm joking.
I wish
Thank
I
you.
could have met you before
Thank
because
you.
I'm a victim. The professional compulsive liar, the tenant, and he kept making up the excuse after excuse, and then I have to serve the Section 21 and 8, and they took a long time. He even had the cheek to ask me to pay for the transport, the car transport.
Removal, yeah.
And also the deposit for the new flat. All sorts of in the cheek, and then I was fed up. Cut long story short, I lost £20,000.
Wow.
Totally scam, liar. So my question is, I wish I could have met you at that time, and I'm going to ask for your help. But anyway, I agree. I can't get money back. My point is, I don't want anybody go through the same experience as me. So, if any sort of 999 for the bad tenants to discredit and then to let everybody know.
Yeah, name and shame. I mean, I've been naming. Thank you. I've been naming and shaming bad tenants for a long time. I've been threatened. I get calls, whatever, but I just do it, right? Because the worst, and what you've had to go through is the worst thing to do because it consumes your life. So if you walk away from this talk and you learn one thing, what I do and what I've been doing for 18 years. I've done hundreds and hundreds of talks, and it's not the most sexiest thing about sourcing deals and finding deals. That's the great thing. It's about sustaining longevity and actually making your property pay. That's the key, And if you can't be able to manage, and obviously if you use the letting agents, you obviously got let down for that, which is really bad as well. What I try and do is I try and make you streetwise, And if I leave an impact on you, and you think, that doesn't right, or there was some talk before about gut feeling. If something's not right with the tenant, or you do a viewing and you ask them questions, if you do viewings, don't take the word just for the letting agent because they want the commission. Especially if it's let only. what you're doing is you're putting a jigsaw together. And actually, if you do put a jigsaw together and there is a problem, actually, how can I trace them? What can I do? Who can I contact? So that's the important thing. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that. But, I said that if we know that guy that's done that to you, he would do that to someone else. And I've got dossiers before I tried to get the police involved, and they're just not interested.
Just to follow up on that,
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think of the idea of, she's not going to get the money back, but what she can do
Name and shame
is, put a money claim and put a CCJ on the guy.
Yeah, yeah.
So at least when they go for the next tenancy application,
Yeah, definitely.
it'll come up on the reference.
No,
What do you
that's
think of
right,
that?
and that's a big problem. Landlords don't. I'm actually doing a campaign which I've lined up next week. What happens is that when you go to court on a Section 8 case, it's not a CCJ, right? Because it's accruing debt. It has a daily rate. It's not as if you give me an invoice and you get a judgment. It shows up. You have to enforce it. But then you have to find out where they move to. And normally you wait 3 to 6 months for them to come out through the financial system. The difference now, what does help landlords, is you have social media. And people talk about themselves a lot, okay? Especially on Twitter and obviously on Facebook and Instagram, whatever. So actually that can give you an indication of what's going on. You can trace it. Yes, you can do that, but people get through it. What really you need to do is name and shame people. So really, I said, if the guy's doing it to someone else and you find out who that landlord is, speak to me and I'm happy to knock on his door with a film crew.
Okay. Anyone else with a
Question over there?
Let's have.
We're going to have a question from Louis. It's going to be in 3 parts, I can imagine.
Thanks. Hi. I can understand when you're evicting a tenant under normal circumstances, you want to sell the property, 6 to 8 months, you're moving someone out of their home, it's, that's understandable. But why does it take so long to remove a tenant who's clearly bad? I mean, someone someone can walk into a property and start taking the mick from day one and just not paying, and you simply cannot do anything about it. And I don't buy this. You hear that, the courts are backed up, but the amount that landlords are losing, they'll be happy to pay a couple of grand to the court to get them out quicker. So.
Well, they will do, Look, I agree with you. I agree. I mean, we have possession claims online, so we get quick hearing dates. We had one the other day. We got a hearing date 29 days later, which is great. Normally it takes 2 months. You go to Central London County Court, which has now been moved to the Royal Courts of Justice. It's got the biggest jurisdiction of rented property. And you can imagine the rents in Central London where we are now, it costs a fortune. Okay? It's hard, you go to Italy to try and evict a tenant, it could take you best part of 14 months. I had a business in Spain for 7 years. I did rent guarantee for landlords in Spain. Don't ask me about that. That's another story for another day. But we had rental insurance, and actually we used an arbitration system. It takes 4 months to evict a tenant, and it all depends. Look, the analogy I use, when you go to Tesco's, you pay for your shopping, correct? It's exactly like that when you rent a property out. It's like theft, as far as I'm concerned. Because actually, the most important payment that comes out of our monthly payments is our rent or a mortgage, correct? And that's why you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it. So that month and a day you're serving your Section 8 notice. Don't actually wait 8, 10, 12 months, which I've had landlords call me up and then say, can you collect the money? Well, you waited 12 months. You've got to move quickly. And then you've got to issue a claim. And then you've got to make sure. So that's why the referencing, the guarantors, being up to speed with the referencing. If the tenant misses a payment, call the workplace up. Is he still in the workplace? If he's left the workplace, well, then maybe he needs to apply for local housing allowance.
I was talking about if you do all that.
But
I've only ever evicted someone once, and it took 9 months, and I was on it. Literally 2 months, serve notice, etc.
Well, what notice did you serve? A Section 8 or 21?
21. It took 4 months to go from.
But were you owed rent? Were you owed rent?
It wasn't that.
Right, so you did accelerated. So you're still getting your rent anyway. So what I'm saying is, when you served your 2 month notice, your rent was up to date. You had to get the property back, or were you owed rent arrears?
No, I wasn't owed rent arrears.
Right, so what I'm saying is the accelerated procedure is 2 months, 2 months and 6 weeks, right? But you still were getting your rent. There was no rent arrears, was there?
It wasn't that, but you just think, well, if there was rent arrears, the point is.
Well, then you go under Section 8, so it's a 14-day notice, not a 2 month notice. So then you're chopping off 6 weeks.
But in my case, it took.
Yeah, because you weren't going
months.
for rent arrears, but you were still getting your rent in the meantime.
No, what I mean is, on that case, it took 4 months to get the bailiffs in from the possession order.
Well, yeah, but that's ridiculous. I mean, what we would do is we're quite lucky because we got telephone numbers of bailiffs. because we have so many cases. You know, I might have 20 cases in one court. You know, we'll try and call them up. But it depends, you know, it really does depend. You know, and now, when I first started, court fees were 100 quid. You know, accelerated possession court fee is 355, and an online court fee for possession is 325. Well, hold on a sec, it's 3 times. You'd think you'd invest that in. You know, it's changed. It's frustrating. This is the only way. I wish I had a magic wand and say, but, you know, I try and engage with the Ministry of Justice, and you get, you know, you don't really...
Paul, you mentioned, you know, professionalisation of the industry, build-to-let, institutional investors coming in. Is there any lobby from those people to say, look, you've got to give us quicker repossession? Or
I sat on the consultation when the new Section 21s were coming out, and we were talking about housing courts. You know, we were talking about all different types of things. You know, the problem you've got is that depending on the court you're at, I mean, the city courts where there's more buy-to-let, it takes longer. The worst thing is, you get a quicker hearing date, but then you've got to wait for months for eviction. So then you might need to put an application to the court and try and get it transferred up and make an application. So, you know, the main thing is, in your case, you were getting your rent, so it was less painful. But if you're trying to sell it and you need to sell it, it could hamper your sale as well, and the tenant may not give you access. You know, so we get all these calls. You can imagine hundreds of cases. We get all these calls, and landlords being frustrated with us. And where's my property? Where's about? Well, hold on. We've just put the application in. It's frustrating. But, you know, what I'm saying is I always tell landlords worst case scenario. You're in for 4 to 5 months. It could cost you £1,500. How can you afford to pay the mortgage? Well, do you have any other bills that you've got to be able to try? And it's the landlords, the real amateur landlords that don't have a B plan, that sometimes get their properties repossessed while we're trying to evict the tenant as well, you know. But it is a lot better than a lot of other countries, believe it or not. Actually, if you lived in France, you wouldn't be able to evict your tenant from December to March. They have an amnesty, believe it or not. Yeah, they have an amnesty, you know. So we are quicker than a lot of other countries when it comes to eviction.
On that note...
Are you going to stick around for the end?
How long we got?
well, we're going to wrap up now. People will stay
I'll be
around
for 10 minutes and I have to shoot,
after
unfortunately. But
you've
if
got
anyone
to-
wants my card, I've got some business cards as well.
Yeah, and if you haven't had your fill, he's on the telly tomorrow night.
Tomorrow at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock,
PM, doing some evictions and all the rest of it.
So should we give him a round of applause?
Big round.
Thank you.